Hey guys, today we're diving into something that's probably affecting your relationships right now, even if you don't realize it. You see, there's this incredibly fine line between setting healthy boundaries and being controlling, and let me tell you, most of us have crossed it without even knowing. But here's the thing. Understanding this difference could be the key to transforming your relationships, both romantic and professional. Before we dive into solutions, let's talk about what happens when we get boundaries wrong, and trust me, I've seen this play out countless times. You know that feeling when you're constantly saying yes when you want to say no? That's how resentment starts creeping in. It's like a slow-acting poison in your relationships. Here's what's fascinating. When you don't set proper boundaries, people actually lose respect for you over time. It's counterintuitive, but it's true. They might not even realize it's happening. And eventually, what happens? Your relationships start feeling like a marathon you never signed up for. You're constantly tired, always giving, and wondering why everything feels so heavy. Now, here's where things get really interesting, and where most guys get tripped up. Let's break down the key differences between setting healthy boundaries and being controlling. Think of healthy boundaries as a fence around your own garden, while controlling behavior is like trying to dictate how your neighbor should tend to theirs. Healthy boundaries are all about protecting your own energy and values. It's like having a shield that protects you, not a weapon that controls others. Now, controlling behavior, that's when you're trying to be the director of someone else's life movie. It's focusing on changing them instead of protecting yourself. When you set healthy boundaries, you're crystal clear about your limits. No mind games, no hint dropping. It's as straightforward as saying, "I'm not comfortable with that," or "This is what I need." Watch out for these red flags: guilt-tripping, passive-aggressive comments, or using the silent treatment. These are all forms of manipulation that masquerade as boundaries. Here's the beautiful part: healthy boundaries actually show respect for others' autonomy. You're saying, "This is my line," while acknowledging they have the right to make their own choices. Controlling behavior says, "You must do this my way." It's not about your own limits anymore. It's about forcing others to live by your rules. And yes, healthy boundaries can bend when the situation calls for it. They're not prison walls. They're more like guidelines that can adapt to different contexts and relationships. Unlike healthy boundaries, controlling behavior is as rigid as concrete. There's no room for discussion, no flexibility, just strict rules that others must follow, or else. Let's break down the 4 essential pillars that make boundaries work. Think of these as your boundary-setting blueprint. The first pillar is self-awareness. And guys, this is where everything starts. You've got to get real with yourself about what you can and can't handle. It's like knowing your max weight at the gym. Push too far and you'll get hurt. Understanding your triggers isn't being weak, it's being smart. It's like knowing which roads to avoid during rush hour. Your non-negotiables are your core values. These aren't preferences, they're your fundamental operating system. Next up is clear communication, because boundaries don't work if they're just in your head. Using I statements is like having a GPS. It keeps the conversation focused on your experience rather than attacking others. When you state your needs directly, you're not being demanding, you're being honest. It's like giving someone clear directions instead of expecting them to read your mind. Avoiding blame language means focusing on solutions, not pointing fingers. It's the difference between building bridges and building walls. The third pillar is consistent action, because actions speak louder than words. Following through isn't about being tough, it's about being reliable to yourself first, then to others. Maintaining your standards is like sticking to your workout routine. Skip a few days and suddenly it's been months. Accepting consequences means understanding that not everyone will like your boundaries, and that's okay. It's part of the process. Finally, there's respectful flexibility, because life isn't black and white. Being flexible doesn't mean being weak. Think of it like martial arts. The strongest fighters know when to bend and when to stand firm. Considering others' needs while maintaining your boundaries is an art. It's about finding that sweet spot between compassion and self-respect. Staying open to dialogue shows strength, not weakness. It means you're secure enough in your boundaries to discuss them. Here's a truth bomb that might change how you think about boundaries forever. Your boundaries aren't about showing others who's boss. They're a direct reflection of how much you respect yourself. When I say self-respect, I'm talking about that deep inner knowing of your worth. Not the ego-driven kind of respect that needs to prove something to others, but the quiet confidence that comes from knowing your own value. Think about it. When you truly respect yourself, you don't need to control others. You just need to be clear about what works for you and what doesn't. It's like having a premium car. You don't need to tell everyone it's valuable. You just take good care of it. Look, we've all messed up when setting boundaries. Let's talk about the most common mistakes I see guys making. And trust me, I've seen these play out countless times. First up, over-explaining. You know when you're trying to set a boundary and suddenly you're giving a TED talk about why you need it. That's actually undermining your boundary. It's like saying, I don't really believe I deserve this boundary, so let me convince you. Keep it simple, clear, and confident. Here's another big one, apologizing for having boundaries. Saying things like, I'm sorry, but I can't, or I hate to say this, but it's like apologizing for having a front door on your house. Your boundaries are your right, not something to feel guilty about. Setting boundaries when you're heated is like trying to perform surgery during an earthquake. It's not going to go well. When emotions are running high, we tend to build walls instead of boundaries. Wait until you're calm to have these conversations. Inconsistency is like having a security system that only works sometimes. One day you're firm about your boundary, the next day you let it slide. This sends mixed signals and actually invites people to test your limits more often. And finally, making threats instead of statements. There's a huge difference between, if you do this again, I'll never speak to you, and I don't accept this kind of behavior in my life. One is a threat that creates drama, the other is a clear statement of your standards. Now let's talk about how to actually communicate these boundaries in a way that gets respect, not resistance. The what and why method is like giving someone a map with clear directions. First, state what your boundary is, then briefly explain why it matters to you. For example, I need to have my Sunday mornings free for my personal time because it helps me recharge for the week ahead. Simple, clear, and authentic. Timing is everything, guys. Having a boundary conversation when someone's stressed, tired, or in a rush is like trying to plant seeds in a tornado. Pick a calm moment when you both have the mental space to talk. And choose a private setting. Nobody needs an audience for these conversations. Here's where most guys slip up. They focus on what the other person is doing wrong, instead of expressing their own needs. Instead of saying, you always interrupt me, try, I need to be able to finish my thoughts in conversations. See the difference? One creates defensiveness, the other opens dialogue. Your emotional state when communicating boundaries is like the background music in a movie. It sets the tone for everything else. Stay composed. Speak with conviction, but not aggression. Think of it as being the calm captain of your ship, not the angry bouncer at a club. Let's put all this into practice with some real-world scenarios that you might face tomorrow. Here's a common work situation. Your colleagues keep scheduling meetings that run into your lunch break. Using what we've learned, you might say, I block off 12 to 1 for lunch to maintain my energy throughout the day. I'm happy to meet before or after that time. Notice how this explains the benefit while offering alternatives. No drama, just clear standards. For relationships, let's talk about phone time. Instead of getting frustrated when your partner checks their phone during dinner, try, I'd like us to have phone-free dinners together for 30 minutes. This time means a lot to me, and I want us to be present with each other. You're not controlling their behavior, you're expressing what matters to you. Family boundaries can be tricky, especially around holidays. Here's how to handle it. We'll be joining you for Christmas dinner from 2 to 6 p.m. this year. This allows us to also spend time with other family members and have some downtime. It's specific, respectful, and doesn't leave room for guilt trips. With friends, maybe you need more personal space. Try this. I really value our friendship, and I also need some alone time to recharge. Let's plan to meet up once a week rather than spontaneously. This maintains the connection while protecting your energy. Before we wrap up, let's lock in the most important lessons that will transform how you handle boundaries. Remember, setting boundaries isn't about controlling others, it's the ultimate act of self-respect. When you honor your boundaries, you're telling yourself and the world that your well-being matters. The power isn't in forcing others to do what you want. It's in being crystal clear about what you will and won't accept in your life. No manipulation, no games, just honest, direct communication about your needs. Your boundaries are only as strong as your willingness to maintain them. Think of it like building trust. It takes time to establish, but can be damaged quickly if you're not consistent. This is a journey, not a destination. You'll make mistakes, adjust, and get better over time. What matters is that you're taking steps to create healthier relationships with yourself and others. Start small, stay committed, and watch how your life transforms.